landscape of all of these different elements and all these different products that exist out there. And like, oh, if you just plug all of those together using AI, like that's how this is going to be the fuel. This is going to be like the jet fuel.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I am founder and creator of the newsletter If You Know, You Know. It is a newsletter for small business owners to learn about AI tools, AI happenings, and generally just become more creative. Today, I'm speaking with Juliana. Juliana, could you introduce yourself and tell us why we're talking?
I'm Juliana Vail. I'm the managing director of Dreem AI. My career has been focused a lot on commercial photography and managing large scale commercial studios. And now my role is to kind of explore how AI is going to transform and support all of the processes that go along with that.
When was the first time you picked up a camera? And then walk me through that to where you are now.
Oh, wow. That is a very good question. I would say the first time I picked up, I mean, I had to be, like 6 or 7. I mean, I remember doing fashion photo shoots in my backyard with my girlfriends. I remember like dressing people up and having fashion shows, but I really started looking into photography seriously in high school. So that's when I started the kind of darkroom process. Had a little bit of a meandering path, but eventually got my degree in advertising photography from RIT.
We all have a meandering path. You can't be a creative without that. And then could you tell me a quickie about Dreem AI and what your day-to-day role is there?
Yeah. So I can't really explain Dreem AI without explaining Creative Force, which is our parent company. So Creative Force is a end-to-end workflow management platform. So we focus specifically on large-scale e-commerce operations. Our customers are retailers, brands, and large commercial photo studios who use our software to manage everything from like samples management to planning the talent, managing style guides, review and approval. So we really manage everything from the point it hits the studio to when it gets online. And so we support images, video, now copy, and we're getting into 3D as well. So Dreem, as an extension of that, is now exploring how AI is going to transform the e-commerce content production industry in general, but also then developing very specific tools that help out within that workflow. So a lot of very near-term opportunities like copywriting and reading garment labels, color correction, but also thinking about how is the way that we're going to manage content in the future and how are we going to create content in the future also transform well.
I love that. And when you're thinking about your role and your handprint on this company, what is your favorite process, favorite feature that you have within this product?
Yeah, so I think what I spend a lot of my time doing is actually kind of talking to people in the industry, exploring what's the best, what's the state of the art, what's the best practice. And so I think right now it's so small, but it's such a significant thing is the color correction tool that we have. And so my team has been able to develop something that, would take, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half, and you do it in maybe 15 seconds. And it automatically takes a garment. It can read where there's labels, where there's buttons on it, and then correct it to a new color, like almost immediately. And it's incredible. It seems like such a simple thing, but actually the technology behind it is fairly sophisticated. They're stacking a ton of different capabilities within that. And so to do a lot of what we do in e-commerce at scale is actually very difficult. You could do all these like crazy novel, out there things within a lot of these generative tools, but to do things that are like scalable, repeatable, consistent is actually still very difficult. And so those are the types of things that we're working on.
Oh my goodness. And then when you're talking about the brands that you're working with, is this product only for enterprise B2B, or are you talking with daily designers as well?
So right now, the products that we're building are only available within Creative Force. So they're part of the Creative Force product suite. But I mean, as part of my role, I'm out there talking to anybody that's kind of willing to talk about AI more generally. I mean, I think a lot of
how we started talking.
Exactly. I think what's really interesting is kind of what's happening at the fringes, or what's happening kind of not necessarily like within the core of e-commerce production, but what's happening more like in the advertising world. And if you've just seen Sora get released, I mean, it's mind-blowing how quickly things are moving there. So yeah, so it definitely is. I'm trying to keep my pulse on where our current customers are, where our prospective customers, how they're thinking about it. But it's also about, okay, what are the crazy wacky things that people are doing out there in the industry?
Yeah. And just to give our listeners, because we have a spectrum of beginners to
Yeah.
experts and everything in
Perfect.
between, Sora is the video, text to video that just came up for OpenAI. And I just
Thank you.
reposted their Orca video. It looks so cool. I'm so
Incredible.
excited about it. But I'd also love to hear from your experience with, decades, years of experience as a commercial photographer.
Hmm.
Put on that hat. Like,
Yeah.
what are the things that you're seeing in Creative Force that's like, holy cats, this is going to make photographers' life so much easier? I want you to brag about those features or just your experience in that creative
Yeah.
spot full time.
So putting on my commercial photographer hat, I would probably be very excited about certain elements, and I'd be very concerned about other elements
Okay.
of generative. And this is what I'm hearing. I talk to a
Yeah.
lot of people at conferences. I talk to a lot of friends in the industries. You talked to my good friend Steve Geralt about this a little while back. And so I think we are coming up in sort of this next wave of digital transformation. It's going to be very similar to how the industry was transformed when we went from shooting film into shooting digitally. It increased the efficiency that you had to take images and produce imagery, but it also opened up new outlets and new places for this imagery to be experienced. So if you think about what it was in, I don't know, the mid 90s, when everybody was still shooting film, you were getting like printed catalogs, and there was no e-commerce industry, there was no Instagram or no social. And so I think that's really what this technology is going to open up. It's going to be this like next sort of leap in terms of customer experience, and this next leap in terms of how we're going to produce that content. So I think that's the really exciting bit. I think, and these discussions are happening very publicly right now. I think if I was your average like commercial fashion model, I'd probably be a little concerned. I think that is by far the most expensive piece of
Mm.
the photography business. And so I think it is probably going to be somewhat disrupted. And so I think they're going to have to do a lot to try to protect their own IP and try to protect their own likenesses.
We've been trending in this area as well. I see like Miranda Kerr. She's a whole brand in and of herself now. And she's
Yeah,
not just a model. She's like a
right.
designer, a mom, a
Exactly.
partner. There's so many facets to her as a brand. And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
we've, I hate the word groom. That's like not the good word to use, but we've have the models in this space have to know how to use social and know how to connect and
Yeah.
know how to have skills
Yeah.
outside of modeling. So I think it just makes sense that this is
Yeah.
the next direction.
Exactly. And I think like your point about skills is really valid, is that, I think everybody's got to skill up in AI. And
Yeah.
as an average photographer, again, putting on my photographer hat, I'm
Average. No, no, no. We don't say average around here. We say
as an
phenomenal commercial.
exceptional as an
Yes.
exceptional talent,
Yes.
creative talent. No, I mean, I think it really is important that you're exploring these tools and understanding what they're capable of. And I think too, where it is right now is actually, out of the box, these tools are not as good as as you think they are. Like, in order to do the things that are like repeatable and actually, using specific products, you're stacking, 5 or 6 different products together, 5 or 6 different tools together in order to generate, the imagery. So there's a amount of skill set that goes into that. But I do think about, what roles are going to have to be reskilled as part of this future, or what new skills are going to have to come into a commercial photo studio in the next like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And then when you're thinking back in your career as well, do you have a moment that was a catalyst where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to pay attention to this AI thing. I've known about AI forever, and now I really need to make sure that I'm staying a finger on the pulse or whatever the term is.
Yeah.
Because I've seen, for folks listening, Juliana has amazing content on LinkedIn, like always posting amazing posts and stories and commenting. I'm just so grateful that you're in my network and I get to see some of the stuff that you're sharing. I'm just very grateful for that. But
Thank
what
you.
was the catalyst moment for you?
It didn't come from within the industry. I think the catalyst moment came from attending a conference. It's called the PI Apparel Conference. It's focused on actually like digital product creation. So think of like SketchUp, but for clothing, right? So where you can actually design patterns, you can actually simulate cloth and simulate all of that. And so after that, you sort of look at the landscape of all of these different elements and all these different products that exist out there. And like, oh, if you just plug all of those together using AI, like that's how this is going to be the fuel. This is going to be like the jet fuel that is going to kind of transform the content experience, the content creation, how we manage the workflow of it. It's utterly going to transform everything. But I mean, again, they're all still existing. They're not talking to each other. So I think quite frankly, another 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a lot more advancement there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You've done an excellent job talking about Dream AI and Creative Force. I would love for you to brag about yourself and talk about your experience, your handprints on the tools that you're making, the posts that you're writing about. Can you tell us a little bit about like a proud moment you've had in this space the last year, the last couple of months?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm approaching everything with just sort of an open mind and a level of curiosity. And that's so bland or vague to say, but I think it's,
No.
I think it's very true. It's everything's changing so quickly. So I think, for instance, one thing, there's a lot of these like point solutions. So there's a lot of things where, there's developers that are coming out of like traditional Silicon Valley that are trying to develop these tools to solve for an industry that they don't really understand. And so, and it goes back to needing tools that are, scalable, repeatable, that they're reliable, and making sure that they will fit natively within the workflows that creatives are normally in, and that they look good too, which is really important. And so I think that's really what we're trying to solve for. And that a lot of when you go and explore that people can do very good demos, but when you actually put things into real-time production, it starts to break down. And so so I think that's
Are you
really
spending some of your time researching and like
oh yes.
having thought leadership of your team saying like, hey, developers, we need to make sure we're using these tools?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well,
Okay.
not using those tools, but understanding what they're capable of.
Got
And,
it.
I have a lot of friends who are doing these explorations, and I'm like,
Yeah.
who are you using? What are you exploring? What's your feedback? And so, and it is that it's that a lot of these solutions talk a good game, but none of them are at that like enterprise level. They're fine if you need something like, 1, 2 off type of production.
Or internal.
Yeah. But when you say, no, we need thousands of images a day, it's just, it doesn't scale. So, so those are the interesting kind of problems that we're trying to solve for.
Well, then maybe we'll find a way to collaborate one day because,
exactly.
well, you've heard about my stuff. We'll talk about it later. We're not going to talk about it now. But
and I think the other missing element that I kind of want to discuss as well is kind of the sustainability side of this. So there is an enormous kind of carbon footprint that's spent shipping samples, shipping people, consuming energy within these processes. And so I think that's the other bit that really excites me as well is having these technologies be able to kind of contribute back and start to reduce traditional industries that consume a lot of energy and carbon footprint.
Yeah. No, same. I think that's why we're both sitting here. And then when you're gearing up the laptop, the computer on the East Coast, it's cold in the winter, startup life is no joke. Do you have a quote or a feeling or a meditation or something that you personally gravitate towards when those moments are really hard and you're feeling low? I would love for you to share. And I'm just trying to instill hope because I think a lot of the folks that are listening to this are like, dang, I need to like get my, keep going. So I'd love to hear any type of quote or anything that
the phrase like touch grass. I don't know if you've heard this. People are like if you're like really stressed out, like go touch grass. But my version of that is like go touch dog. Um, she's, you get off a stressful call, or, you're just sort of, stuck in a moment. I think like a walk around the block or just a little like boop on the nose is, it makes my day. So I think
Oh,
that's great. It's probably not, gonna go on a t-shirt or a book title anywhere, but yeah, that's what I have been thinking about the last couple days.
no.
Yeah.
Well, Juliana, we have to get dogs. That's the quote. That's the
That's
takeaway.
my
That's everyone's
advice, right?
homework.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Juliana, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your effort, your energy in this space. I hope to meet you at one of these conferences, hopefully Pexels, potentially in April. But thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn and hopefully in person until then.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you all. Have a good one.